You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody. Excuse me, my voice is already gone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dan's World. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Always the top two questions at the forefront of my mind as we start this week's live show. We had a little bit of a topic adjustment right before we came on because I was still doing my research, as I always do, right up until the time we go live. So we are going to talk about Warner Brothers and Stephen Colbert, which were the original topics of discussion. And I want to take your questions on that specifically. I had a big, long video this morning kind of breaking down where we are with Warner Brothers and Paramount and Netflix and how we got there. But if you have any questions about that, I want to try to answer those for you if I can. I'm going to talk a little bit about Stephen Colbert and The Late Show and everything that's been going on with them the last couple of days, although I think I may actually do a deep dive video on that for the channel tomorrow or Friday. But what I want to start with, well, a couple things I want to start with. First of all, I already saw some of your comments coming in, which is great. And it sounds like you can all see me and hear me, which is great. But I did see somebody saying, and I've had a couple people ask me about this. Yesterday, Screen Junkies announced at the end of their Honest trailer that Movie Fights is coming back. It's kind of a cryptic announcement. It just said Movie Fights is coming back soon. And that's all we really know about that right now. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that and say that you should probably stay tuned for updates on that to find out even more about what's going on with Movie Fights, because I would imagine that news could be exciting. As you know more about when that's going to be and who's going to be involved, I'm looking forward to that announcement being made. So just draw your attention to that. I believe Fandom's Instagram is Get Fandom. They may be making an announcement over there, but just so you know, Movie Fights is coming back in some capacity very soon. So you should be on the lookout for more information about that. So that is definitely going to be something I think that's going to be very exciting for a lot of people in the very near future. Let's see. Golden Eagle 92 says it's been a minute since I caught a live show. Last time I got into a live show, I got Dan to talk about Buc-ee's for 5 minutes straight. One of my favorite conversations we've ever had on this show. And I will tell you, my uncle, who sadly passed away earlier this year, is the one who took me to Buc-ee's the first time. And I think I mentioned that in that story. And my mom sent him that video when I did it. And he really got a kick out of it and said that he even showed it to some of his friends. So thank you for getting me to talk about Buc-ee's for 5 minutes straight, because it was great to talk about Buc-ee's. I love talking about Buc-ee's because it really is one of the wonders of the modern world. So let's talk about the topic that I changed to shortly before we went on the air, and just because I think it's an interesting story. If you know me, I don't get into a lot of the sides of the whole Star Wars talk that happens on the internet, because a lot of it, quite frankly, just doesn't interest me. But this was interesting to me. We all know that there was a Ben Solo Star Wars movie that was canceled. Kathleen Kennedy has talked about it as she was exiting Lucasfilm. There has been a lot of frustration around that. It's sort of been the focus of the latest kind of fan-based movement, which, of course, the Snyder Cut being the most famous one. We talked a little bit about Conformity Gate here on the show. That, I think, would count as a fan-based movement, definitely driven by people who were ultra fans of Stranger Things and wanted there to be this last episode. And I have seen people hiring planes to fly banners over Disney saying, do the Ben Solo movie. People doing billboards in Times Square saying, do the Ben Solo movie. So there is definitely a lot of fan interest about this film. Very briefly, it was going to have Adam Driver. He was going to come back as Ben Solo, and Steven Soderbergh was attached to direct the film and had been developing it for quite some time. Who knows what's going on with this Rey movie, if it's still happening. I don't even know what's really happening at Disney right now, but Steven Soderbergh did talk about it a little bit in a recent interview, I think with BK Mag. They asked him about it, and he said, quote, "It was no surprise that Kathleen Kennedy was frustrated." And that's something, by the way, before we get deeper into this quote, that's important to note, which is that this Ben Solo movie apparently was not canceled by Kathleen Kennedy. It was the higher ups at Disney. It was Bob Iger and the executives at Disney who said, we're not going to do this movie. So it's not Lucasfilm canceling the movie. So Soderbergh said, it was no surprise that Kathleen Kennedy was frustrated. We were all frustrated. That was 2.5 years of free work for me and Adam and writer Rebecca Blunt. The stated reason for not making the film was we don't think Ben Solo could be alive. And that was all we were told. And so there's nothing to do about it except move on. I kind of made the movie in my head and just felt bad that nobody else was going to get to see it. I thought the conversation was strictly going to be a practical one. Where they go, what is this going to cost? And I had a really good answer for that, but it never even got to that point. It's insane. We're all very disappointed. And, this thing was in such an early stage of development that everybody wants a hero and wants a villain and wants to say that it was a mistake for Disney to not do it, or that it would have been a mistake for Disney to do it. Look, and I haven't had a whole lot of strong thoughts on the Ben Solo movie, but it is intriguing to me, the idea of having somebody like Steven Soderbergh involved in this movie, because it's not something that you would maybe anticipate him being involved in. And I'm looking at your responses too as you come in. This is a weird Dan Murrell audiobook, so much text to read. Well, it's read along. I'm not just asking you to talk about it. Burger King Magazine, I always go there for the latest film news. Yeah, they have a great kids club over at BK Magazine. Don't spam Star Wars content. Just let it sit and marinate for a while. I mean, theatrical content, they definitely have not been spamming. But yes, on Disney Plus, I would agree with that. But when we get to a Star Wars topic, I know that there's always going to be discussion, but it is surprising to me. I think that what we've seen with Disney, and I've said many times before that I think that Disney has just mismanaged things on a corporate level for their major franchises in the last 5 to 8 years or so. And this is what you see. And it's what we have seen with Disney and Star Wars, which is they get spooked. Marvel did it as well. I think that's why we have Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Dr. Doom. They get spooked. For Marvel, it was the whole thing with Kang and the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania didn't really work that well. And then everything that happened with Jonathan Majors. And so they made a course correction. I think they got spooked and decided, let's do Dr. Doom. We're bringing Robert Downey Jr. Let's do that. We'll see if that works out. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't work out. But you'll see projects that get canceled or projects that get made because a company gets spooked because of something. And I think with Star Wars, I think that Disney is still spooked by The Last Jedi and then The Rise of Skywalker and the reaction to that. They haven't really known what to do. We've had the Rogue Squadron movie, which was happening, and then it wasn't happening, and then it was happening again, and now it's not happening, and all the different trilogies and hiring all these different people, Benioff and Weiss, and Rian Johnson's going to do it. Well, no, he's not going to do it. And Taika Waititi, they say, yeah, maybe still, but not. They don't know what to do. And I think what could possibly have been lost here, because the new information here that we get in this interview is that it wasn't like they went and said, it's too expensive, you can't do it. It literally was, we don't know how this concept will work. We don't see how he could be alive, and so we've canceled the movie. And to me, that says that they just didn't have faith that it could be good. Not that it would be good. They didn't have faith that it could be good or that fans would buy it. At that point as a company, and I think that this is a very strong indicator of spooked thinking, they weren't thinking about the practicalities of what was in front of them. They were thinking about the theoreticals of what might be in front of them. They were trying to troubleshoot ahead and say, no, we just don't think that this concept is going to work. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. If this was just one example, then I would say perhaps I'm overanalyzing it a bit. But I think that this is just the latest in a series of symptoms we've seen at Disney with Star Wars and with so many of their other franchises, where they're not necessarily judging what is in front of them. They are judging what might be coming down the road. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you avoid stepping on a landmine because of that. Sometimes it leads to paralysis, creative paralysis, and executive paralysis. And I think that that's what we've seen at Disney, especially when it comes to theatrical Star Wars stuff. The Disney Plus stuff was a requirement. They had to make streaming stuff, because if they weren't making original streaming content for Disney Plus, then they couldn't justify to their investors why they spent billions of dollars on making Disney Plus. We're coming out of that cycle now. The last 5 years, really, with Disney and with all the other companies and studios that started streaming services, is we have to justify this investment by putting even more money into original content, because then we can say we made this thing to make all this stuff. But the problem is, not a whole lot of the original content for for Star Wars on Disney Plus has brought a lot of new fans in. I think quite the opposite has happened with some of it. So this, to me, is a very interesting case, and it's why I wanted to kind of bump it up to the beginning of the show and talk about it a little bit. And if you have questions, you can leave your questions. You can do a super chat. I'll also try to get through the chat if I can and grab some comments if I can. But it's why I wanted to bump it up to the top of the show, because to me, this isn't just a Star Wars story. This is another indication of how Disney and so many other studios are thinking right now. It's basically this idea of, oh man, we can't take another loss, we can't take another failure. What is this project? But I don't know how that could work. Let's call that off. Even when you have Adam Driver attached, Adam Driver to me doesn't seem like an actor who's going to come back and do a subpar Ben Solo film. Steven Soderbergh to me doesn't seem like a director who would come in and say, "Oh, I'm just going to do a cash grab movie." It seems to me like having those two involved indicates that they had some sort of a take or some sort of something they were excited about with the film, and yet it never really got the opportunity to come to fruition. Not again because Disney said it was too expensive, but because they said, well, we just don't think the character could be alive. And there are some projects I think that have been very good that might not have been made if Disney had been making that decision at a different time. Andor would be one of them. I could see executives saying, like, we can't spend this much on a show set here. No, we've told too much in this. I don't see how this could work. We told too much in this era already. Rogue One was 10 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago at the time of the first season. We just don't think this is going to work. And you don't get down the road. And I think it's the best thing that Disney has made, maybe since they got the Star Wars property, including the films. I think that Andor is probably the best Star Wars thing that Disney's ever made. There's a couple things that come close. We could have that discussion if we wanted to have a Star Wars fight. But to me, it's just another indication of scared thinking. And I think that on a corporate level, a lot of people think that that is the smart thing to do. But it can also be the wrong thing to do. And I don't envy an executive who has to make that decision. Is doing the smart thing, the right thing, or the wrong thing? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But in this case, I feel like it just didn't get down the road enough, or at least from Steven Soderbergh's point of view, from what he says. I'm sure that Bob Iger and Disney have their own take on it or their own thoughts on it. But I wanted to talk about it and bring it up because that's kind of what I like to do on the show and on the channel is, we'll talk about the news and we'll talk about the headline and what was said. But for me, the interesting discussion is what's behind it. And it's kind of my philosophy to box office as well. Yes, these are the numbers. What's behind those numbers? What's behind that decision by that executive? What's behind the reason that people did or didn't show up to this movie? That to me is the real story. And that's the real interesting part. And I will be watching it to see if we learn anything else about this film and also to see what else is Disney going to do going forward. The Mandalorian and Grogu trailer came out. I know that there was somebody mentioned, let's see if I can shout them out here, because somebody did say, don't forget about the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer. And I'm not great at looking through these comments as we go live, mainly because people have been amazing about sending in super chats and stuff. We already have some, but yeah, tough luck. Y16SR said, don't forget that new trailer for the Mandalorian and Grogu too. And I saw it and I felt kind of like, I felt the same as I did when I saw the teaser, whatever you want to call it, that first trailer, which is, okay, this looks like an advertisement to me for the next season on Disney Plus. If I saw that as the advertisement for Mandalorian season 4, I'd go, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'll probably check that out when it comes on. Does it excite me as a theatrical film? Not particularly, because I don't see anything there to differentiate it from what we've seen on Disney Plus. To me, it just looks like the TV show, but in movie form. And is that really going to get people to go to a theater, especially when sentiment has cooled largely on The Mandalorian overall? Part of that is because there's such a long layoff between seasons. Part of that is because season 3 was definitely not as well received as seasons 1 and 2. And I think that could even go back to scared thinking, because part of the reason why season 3 was underwhelming is that Disney was making the Book of Boba Fett show, which they decided to do as a Disney Plus show instead of a movie because they needed original content for Disney Plus. But that season or that series felt like they were even hedging their bet on Boba Fett by saying, well, let's throw in really the resolution to the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian into this Boba Fett show, which didn't fit at all, and which I think completely undercut enthusiasm for season 3 of The Mandalorian, because all the stuff that was set up with season 2, and everyone was so excited at that second season finale, and with the cameo that they got in that finale. And then all of that excitement was sucked out because that resolution was taken out of season 3, put into Book of Boba Fett, which was not a well-regarded show. And then you start the third season of Mandalorian kind of at the status quo. Disney just has not made great decisions, I don't think, by and large. And, you know, it's gone across several CEOs and several divisions. A lot of people want to put it just on one person or just on two people. You know, they want to put it all on Kathleen Kennedy, or for Marvel, they want to put it all on Kevin Feige. It's corporate leadership too. They are just as involved in these decisions as the people that are the heads of these different divisions. That doesn't mean they're blameless all the time, but it does mean that there are multiple parties that bear responsibility. And I feel like Disney is kind of coasting on their reputation as being this super studio because of all of the heights of Star Wars and the MCU and everything else. When you look at their recent history, sure, they've had some big successes, but they've also had big failures. And when I say big failures, I don't mean just a disappointing movie. Disney has had at least 5 or 6 films in the last 3 years, probably more, that have lost the studio $100+ million. Big failures. We talked about Snow White recently. Indiana Jones was one of them because the budget on that movie was astronomical. The Marvel films, by and large, recently have not done well. At a certain point, the rubber's going to meet the road. And Disney is certainly not in the position of strength that it was in even 3 or 4 years ago when this whole cycle started. So, yeah, Paul Hodges, 1293, historic failures. I mean, if it were any other studio but Disney, those would be ruinous failures. Absolutely ruinous failures. The number of movies they had that lost that amount of money, that would be ruinous to almost any other studio. And not just small studios either. Disney has been able to weather it because they're so diversified. They have the parks and they have the other divisions, but that's not going to last forever. And so that also contributes to what I think is this panicked thinking that we're seeing there. Yeah, look at Strange World. Remember that? I did see it. I don't remember Strange World. Huge money loser. Tron Ares, huge money loser. Yeah, it's insane how many movies, big money losers Disney has produced. And at some point, you got to pay that bill unless they can turn things around. So, all right. It's a bit of a less structured show today because I wanted to talk about, it was sort of a late adjustment to talk about this Ben Solo Star Wars Mandalorian stuff. But I also wanted to see if you had any questions. As always, I'm open to whatever questions you want to ask through Super Chat. I will definitely get to them if you ask in the Super Chat. As I said, I'm going to try to get to comments here in the comment section if I can. But I also want to know if you have any questions or anything that you want to talk about with a couple of things. As I mentioned, the Stephen Colbert FCC situation, I am planning a deep dive video into that to really get into the grit of it, which, you know me, I like getting down in the dirt and getting into the grit of stuff. But I'm planning a video of that. But if you have any general questions about that, and then any follow-up questions to what I talked about in my video this morning about Warner Brothers and Paramount, and the fact that Warner Brothers and Paramount now have this week-long window. I think there's now 5 days left in that window to open negotiations again. Warner Brothers is expecting a new offer, their best and final offer from Paramount. What do you think about that? Do you have any questions about it that I can try to answer? So that's what I want to devote the rest of the show to. Your questions, anything that you might have on Colbert, anything that you might have on Warner Brothers, and we're going to get to those questions. But we've been lucky. We've really picked up on sponsors lately. We have a sponsor for today's show. So before we get to your questions, I want to thank our sponsor, Chubbies. And when we come back, we'll start answering what you've got for me today. This video is brought to you by Chubbies. We are bearing down on the last cold weeks of winter. Grit your teeth. We're almost there. But let me tell you what I've been dreaming about. I've been dreaming about the day that I can throw these bad boys back on. These are my swim trunks from Chubbies. Ever since I got them, they have been my go-to if I'm going to the beach, if I'm going to the pool. The pool is more common considering that I live in Arkansas. But if I'm going swimming, I'm wearing these. I'm excited to get back in the warmer weather and enjoy some time in the sun. And spring break is going to be here before you know it. Chubbies swim trunks are engineered with four-way stretch fabric that are perfect for an all-day swim party or just lounging by the pool. And they're also super soft. They don't have that scratchy synthetic feel that you get from the trunks that you might already have in your drawer. And Chubbies is celebrating 15 years in business with the return of their iconic original shorts, still designed for comfort and built for stretch. With over 2.6 million customers, Chubbies proves that great shorts never go out of style. For a limited time, Chubbies is giving viewers here on the channel 20% off with the code Dan Murrell at chubbiesshorts.com. That's 20% off your order with the code Dan Murrell at chubbiesshorts.com. Give your thighs the VIP treatment they deserve with Chubbies. And hey, while you're there, why don't you support the show and tell them that I sent you? Thanks to Chubbies for sponsoring this video. And I've just been going through a couple comments. This is one of my favorites. Wonder Man opinion. I don't have one. I haven't seen Wonder Man yet. The beginning of my year has been somewhat unsettled. And also, Sundance was absolutely all-consuming. So not only was I just completely immersed while I was at Sundance, it's taken a while for me to catch up after Sundance, and then I got a couple things on the horizon that I'm trying to prep for, and it's Oscar season, so I haven't had a chance to check out Wonder Man yet. So I have no opinion yet on Wonder Man, but I've heard good things. So there you go. All right, let's get to some of your super chats, and we'll see what topics you want to talk about today. And again, if you have any questions about Colbert, Warner Brothers, all that stuff. The first one's from FreakStop95, who says, do you ever miss a Comic-Con? Would you ever go to a local one like in Arkansas? It can be a good time if you're not going for work. Sweet bootlegs there. Yeah, I miss a lot of Comic-Cons. I've actually not been to Comic-Con since the last time we went with Screen Junkies. I think that was 2019, maybe. I loved going to Comic-Con. It was a lot of fun, but I think I went for 6 or 7 years straight, something like that, always for work. And I did always try to take time out. And by the way, we also traveled to several Comic-Cons, especially when we were launching Screen Junkies Plus. We went to Chicago, we went to Seattle, we went to New Orleans. I'm sure there were probably a couple more in there that we went to. And it was always a good time, but I kind of feel like I've done Comic-Con several times now. And yeah, not that I wouldn't ever want to go back, but yes, I do miss a Comic-Con. I've done local cons before. Arkansas does have a couple ones. I've not been, but I'm not necessarily out there looking for bootlegs. Although I do remember buying when I was maybe 12 or 13. I went to a Star Trek convention locally in Arkansas, down in Little Rock, and I did buy a bootleg. It was bootleg Star Trek bloopers, which now are all on YouTube. You just type in Star Trek bloopers and you can get a great quality version of all the bloopers that I bought. But at that time, you couldn't get Star Trek bloopers anywhere. And they were like dubs of dubs of dubs of Star Trek bloopers, old stuff from the original series, a couple things from Next Generation, although it was still airing. There were even some like badly, transferred copies of Star Trek sketches from like In Living Color and Saturday Night Live on there. It definitely was bootleg. I mean, this was all stuff that had been taken from, recorded from exhibitions of Star Trek bloopers at other conventions or taped off the television. So I have gotten a bootleg at a convention before, but it was many years ago in a pre-YouTube era. And the dorky kid that I was just looking for Star Trek bloopers. So yeah, no, I miss a lot of Comic-Cons, but I enjoy going to them. Golden Eagle 92 says, number one, overrated, underrated MCU. For me, it's Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Age of Ultron. Oh man, overrated and underrated. I feel bad because when I call a movie overrated, that means also that a lot of other people love it, and it kind of feels like I'm just taking a dump in their cereal if I say that a movie's overrated, because it just means that I didn't like it personally as much as everybody else does. I think that now, in retrospect, I think that Ragnarok was overpraised for the time because it was so different. I think a lot of the parts of that movie that maybe aren't as strong stand out a little bit more. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I don't think it was the transcendent movie that it was praised as at the time. I think that people have cooled on it a little bit. So I definitely say that Thor Ragnarok was maybe more overrated at the time of its release than maybe how people think of it now. Underrated, I mean, I've always thought that the first Incredible Hulk movie was underrated. It's treated like it is one of the worst movies that's part of the MCU. I actually think that it's a pretty good movie. I like that film. I like Edward Norton in the part. I understand why he didn't come back to do more of it. But I think that the Incredible Hulk is a very underrated film. At least it always has been for me. Sean P. Foster says, I've noticed the Lego Enterprise D behind you. Yes, there it is. In some recent videos, and was curious about your thoughts on the finished build. Yeah, this was when people, family members or whoever asked me, I'm not 40s. I don't have a Christmas list anymore. But when they said, is do you want anything for Christmas, or do you have any ideas? And I would always say the only thing that I want, if you don't mind, is I want to I need this Enterprise D Lego, and it's not a cheap Lego. I was saving for Sundance at the time, and now I'm saving to kind of pay back the what I charged to go to Sundance. So I said, just if you don't mind, trust me, it is not impersonal to me, but I would love gift cards or money or whatever toward buying that Lego. And so that was sort of my Christmas present for my whole family. And it took a while. It took a couple months for me to get it because it was back ordered. But yeah, no, that's been the last week and a half or so for me, putting that together. I mean, I love the Enterprise D. Star Trek is my favorite show. And I'm actually surprised that they were able to engineer how to do it, because with Lego, I mean, rounded edges and stuff. I mean, it's such a sleek ship. I'm surprised that they could figure out how to even design an Enterprise D. And, I mean, does it look like an absolute perfect one-to-one model of the Enterprise D? No. I mean, there are still some angles and things. I mean, they can't do smooth rounded edges. And that's all the Enterprise D is smooth rounded edges. There's not a hard edge on that ship. I love the way that they engineered it at Lego. And again, if I wanted to buy a model of the Enterprise, I could buy a model for probably about as much as that Lego cost, and it would be quote unquote more screen accurate or maybe a little sleeker. But I loved the process of putting it together. I loved, the star drive section. Once it was together, the saucer separation separates from the star drive, so you can have both. So I love it, because I also love, for me, Lego is not just about the look. It's also about the process of putting it together, and how unique it is to have a Lego of something I love that much. So yeah, I thought it was a good build. And I love it, and I love having it on the sets. I decided to throw it back there because it's also huge. I mean, it's maybe tough if we go out of focus here. Sorry, God help me if I drop this thing on a live stream. Uh, I mean, this bad boy is not small. This is a big ship, and I really like how Lego engineered it, and it's hefty. So, yeah, there you go. Big fan of the Enterprise, and a big fan of Lego in general. Just so they know, love Lego. Trey on Glenn 9313 says 3 movies from the 90s that you would recast with Seth Rogen. It's tough for me to do these big categorical questions because I really would like some time to sit and think about it. And rather than sit and watch me think silently for 5 minutes, I'll just try to do the best that I can. But 3 movies from the 90s that I would recast with Seth Rogen specifically. Ooh, I don't even know if I can come up with 3 off the top of my head. Yeah, that's a tough one, because if we're talking about 90s comedy, and I think that that's where you would probably put Seth Rogen. If it's worth putting Seth Rogen in, it's probably pretty good already. And so why would I want to replace somebody with Seth Rogen in it? So I hate to say it, nothing comes to mind. Again, if you gave me 5-10 minutes to think about it, I could maybe throw something up. But the big categorical questions are tough for me to do on the fly. If something pops in my head, I'll let you know, or maybe somebody's got some suggestions. I'll check the live chat in just a second. But nothing immediately springs to mind. Dai Guchoa 3550 says, Dan, any thoughts on using shorts to share your thoughts on movies that don't have the audience for full reviews, e.g. movies you see after release? Yeah, shorts is an interesting topic, because I did one for Jurassic World Rebirth, and it did pretty well. But I'm always trying to do what's best for the channel. and make the decisions that's best for the channel as far as growth, and not do anything that's going to hinder that growth. And the jury, from what I've read, and I look at this a lot, and I've even asked some people that I've spoken to at YouTube when I'm able to check in with somebody at YouTube, and they don't even really have a definitive answer. But I have read in several different places that there are channels that, if long form is what they do, generally they have seen a hit to their performance when they start doing shorts, because the algorithm all of a sudden doesn't know what to push out to people. And so I've seen long form channels that have said, I did shorts and I saw a 10, 20, 30% decrease in my long form video, because the algorithm now thinks I'm doing short form content. And so I'm not saying that that's exactly what happens, but for me, it's just a little too risky. I don't want to mess with whatever's going on with me in the algorithm, because I already have a very dicey relationship with the algorithm. Even this video I did today, I've done Paramount, Netflix, Warner Brothers videos that have done really, really well, and I was hoping that this one I did this morning would do the same. And I mean, it's done fine, but certainly not what the other videos have done, and I can't explain it. So I try not to do anything that might anger the algorithm, because it's just, if that goes, then we're in real trouble here. Ferris EB says, OMG, catching live 3 weeks in a row and on time. I just found out about this Safdie brothers controversy that came out a few weeks ago. Not sure what to think yet, but it sounds pretty awful. Any thoughts? Yeah, I mean, and thank you for that super chat, by the way. It's very generous of you. Yeah, I mean, well, I have very mixed feelings. First of all, and if you don't know, there was an interview that was resurfaced. So this was stuff that was disclosed in an interview before about the filming of Good Time, which has been about 10 years ago now, and that there was an actress in the film who was underage and who had another actor that was in the film in a somewhat explicit scene. It didn't involve nudity, but it was an explicit scene, who said some very graphic stuff to her. And that the Safdie brothers, who were there because it was such a small crew, heard this happen and didn't intervene and did not step in. And this actress had talked about it, I think, several years ago. And then, it's odd every year when somebody is nominated for an Academy Award, all of a sudden these things that may have already made the rounds several years before will miraculously pop back up in the news. That's the dirty side of Oscar campaigning. I 100% believe that this was something that was resurfaced because somebody from a rival studio said, well, we should put this back in the news because it makes, the Safdie that's up for the Oscar this year look bad. It's a terrible thing. And it's not a situation that should have been allowed in the first place. There shouldn't be an actress of that age who was even in a scene like that. Now, that is definitely on the Safdie brothers. It's also on their casting director or whomever they were using. It was a small movie. Good Time is a very small movie, so I don't know the size of that department. It's a terrible situation. It should never have happened. It shouldn't have been allowed. And if the Safdies did not step in and say something, they should have. They absolutely should have. I don't think there's any defense of that situation. At the same time, this is also something that happened many, many years ago. And this is what I have an issue with is the idea of we're going to pull something back from many years ago and then paste it onto today and say that this person has not changed and should be held liable to the same degree 10 years later as if it happened yesterday. I don't know what sort of concession may have been made or what sort of confrontation was had or what lessons were learned. And so that to me is the issue with saying like, well, we should hold them accountable to the same level today as if it happened yesterday. Now, if they were to come out and say, oh, I don't see anything wrong with that today, then that would be something different. I have not seen any statements to that effect, one way or the other. I think at the time there was some denial that one or both of them was even aware of it, and then there was some contradiction to that. So, I don't know the level of accountability to which one or both of them have taken to the situation. It is one of those things. Again, it's just so odd how these things pop back up, even if they're years old around Oscar time. And I think that's a pretty gross motivation, but it was also a pretty gross situation. and something that should not have happened in the first place. I don't think there's any argument about that. And but I also don't think you should say, well, we're not going we're taking him out of Academy Award contention for this, because again, I need those gaps filled in between then and now, before I can make any judgment on who this person is today or what their thoughts on it today. Let's see. The fact that neither brother knew her age until after the scene was filmed is wild. I mean, again, I would have to know more about that production, because if they were involved in casting every single person in the movie, meaning looking at all of the resumes and looking at all the paperwork, then yes, that is wild. But if they went to a casting director and said, here's the kind of person that we want, and the casting director went out and found actors and brought them and said, here are your options, and just showed them headshots or audition tapes or whatever, then it's more on the casting director's side, because they're the ones that should have that information of who is this actor or actress, how old are they underage, is this scene too explicit for them to be in if they're under 18? And I think the actress was 17, I believe. I could be wrong on that. So again, I would need to know more information about that particular production, how much they knew, how involved they were, where, did they have access to that information, or were they just brought actresses? Because many directors, a casting director will say, here are the 3 people I think is good for this, or good for this. And they'll look and they'll say, okay, I think that one's the best. They may not think even to ask a casting director, oh, is that person over 18? Because the casting director should know that. The casting director should flag to them, oh, well, actually, if you want to use that actor or actress, they're actually 17. And so they may not be the best for this scene. I don't know. There's a lot of different factors to this that I don't really know. And again, I have not delved deeply into the case. I've only read several different articles that came up. But yeah, I mean, those are my initial thoughts. But the situation itself is not defensible. Somebody, whether that's the Safdies, the casting directors, their parents, somebody should have stepped in. That should not have been allowed to happen. And systemically, you have to make sure those protections are in place. And that was a failure on their part. Nerdboy1871 says, how would you recast a Fast and Furious reboot? I wouldn't, honestly, at this point. I mean, Fast and Furious isn't even over yet. Just make it another cool speed franchise. Make another cool racing franchise. You can do it. You don't have to call it Fast and Furious. And I think we're so far away from wanting to do a reboot of it. And Vin Diesel, I don't think will ever allow a reboot to happen unless he is also in it, in which case I don't really think it's much of a reboot. So I wouldn't recast a Fast and Furious reboot. I would either let the movies take their course, or I would start another franchise myself. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, I rewatched 3 Billboards for the first time in years, and while I still really like it, I'm on the fence on some of the undertones of it. Nevertheless, the cast is amazing. Thoughts? Well, the cast is amazing. It's actually been, I don't think I've seen 3 Billboards since it came out, which has been, again, I think almost 10 years now, maybe a little bit less. So I don't even really know. I know that that is a movie, from what I do recall, that is a movie with very imperfect characters in it. Characters who say and do heinous things. And I know that at the time there was a lot of criticism for that. Again, depiction does not equal an endorsement. And just because you show characters saying and doing terrible things doesn't mean the movie's advocating for them. And I think a lot of the characters who say and do those things are pay a price for that. But I don't want to go too deep into it, because again, it's been a long time since I saw it. Any Martin McDonagh film, I should just revisit that. Roman Borowinski says, original Short Circuit hits 40th anniversary. Have you ever watched it? Which one is your favorite? Assuming you saw both. I saw Short Circuit when I was a kid, and maybe Short Circuit 2. I definitely have not watched it since I was an adult. So I have seen it, but I don't really have any cogent thoughts on it because I don't really remember it that much. Dylan Fitzsimmons, 2278 says, favorite Steven Soderbergh film. The first one that springs to mind is Traffic, although that's another one I haven't seen in years and years and years. So I don't necessarily know if it holds up, but Traffic is the one that pops to mind. And the Oceans movies, especially the first one, and really anything but Oceans 12, are a lot of fun too. Nerdboy1871 says, if you were in Congress, what would you ask or tell Netflix, Paramount, Skydance, or Warner Brothers about the merger? Okay, that's a good question. So let's say I had all three of them in front of me. I mean, first of all, I would want to know, and this was actually asked. I mentioned this in the video before. It was asked of David Ellison in a letter from one of the senators, Cory Booker, about the antitrust concerns. The questions were ignored by David Ellison, but I would want verified records of, have you discussed this with the administration, the current administration, and has anything been promised to you, or have you promised anything to them? I need a clear question about that. And this is not just aimed, by the way, at David Ellison. We know that Ted Sarandos also has met with President Trump. What did they speak about? Was there anything promised there? Was there any quid pro quo promised there regarding Netflix programming? We know that a lot of people in the president's party aren't happy with the programming on Netflix. They believe that it is woke, as Senator Ted Cruz said, the wokest, I believe it is the wokest programming in the history of the universe, or something like that. So were there any concessions made? I know that there were a lot of eyebrows raised when Netflix canceled Boots, which was a show about a young gay man in the military. And looking at the viewership numbers, I was kind of surprised too, because there have been other borderline cases where the show went ahead. This one was canceled. And, the Department of Defense had, I believe a spokesman had said that they didn't particularly care for that show. So I would want to know, I need records. I need verifiable things. What have you talked about with this administration? Because a merger like this should be completely independent of what a company has or has not promised the current administration or the current politicians. This should be about antitrust, protecting the consumer. And honestly, if it was about antitrust and protecting the consumer, neither one of the acquisitions should go through. Neither one of them. And so that would be the other thing. I would want verified proof of what you may or may not have talked about with the administration and what you may or may not have promised them. And the second one would be, I don't want spin. I want you to demonstrate to me why this is not anti-consumer. Why is this not something that is going to hurt competition, raise prices, result in the elimination of potentially thousands of jobs? Explain to me and sell me on why this is not anti-consumer. And if neither of them can do that, well, then guess what? It doesn't go through. I mean, this idea that any merger can go through as long as you are able to convince and cajole Congress enough in order for it to happen. You have to, your job there, if you're in charge of antitrust, is to prevent antitrust things from happening. And I think that there are compelling cases made for either one of these mergers that it is a serious antitrust consideration. So that would be the subject. That would be probably 80% of the hearing would be, you really have to sell me on why this is not anti-consumer and antitrust. And if there's not a good answer, I'm not going to support it. That's what I do. Emir Hades says, what do you think? What do you make of Doomsday? Was it an organic development, or are they trying to recreate Barbenheimer? I mean, they're definitely trying to recreate Barbenheimer. Anything post Barbenheimer where people are putting two things together is not organic. Barbenheimer was organic. Warner Brothers and Universal did not get together and cook up Barbenheimer. That was born out of memes that were made when people looked at the release schedule and they said, oh, that's funny. Barbie and Oppenheimer are coming out the same day. Wouldn't that be a weird double feature? And that's where that came from. I don't think any of these trying to combine two movies is organic unless we can see the receipts that it was born out of actual fan discussion. Having Timothée Chalamet and Robert Downey Jr. dream it up on stage is not organic. And they're two blockbuster films. The funny thing about Barbenheimer was that they were two diametrically opposed movies. That one was dark and brooding and ponderous, and the other one was bright and shiny and sparkling. And by the way, they both had elements of the other in them, especially Barbie was a lot more serious than I think a lot of people even gave it credit for, thought it was going to be. But that was completely organic. No, I don't think it's organic at all. I think it's completely manufactured. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, I've been seeing on your Letterboxd account that you've been watching PTA's filmography. Do I smell a ranked video coming? Oh, I don't know. Do you? Maybe. I don't know. Stay downwind. Maybe so. Caden Prowse 8079 said, would Paramount Skydance continue Warner Brothers physical media? And pro Netflix cry censorship. Is there proof that Paramount Skydance will censor Warner Brothers? They seem better than Netflix for film's future. I mean, I don't know if Paramount Skydance would continue physical media. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think I don't think there's any studio out there that really has a pro physical media agenda. I think that they would much prefer to eliminate that expenditure, and I think that we're moving in that direction. And I don't think that Ted Sarandos has also said that Netflix would not release any Warner Brothers film on physical media either. I think that's an assumption that's being made. I think that there would be fewer Warner Brothers films on physical media, but do I think that if Netflix were running Warner Brothers and Sinners came out, that they would not put out physical media on it? I think they might. I think this assumption that they're going to completely derail physical media is just that, an assumption. But I don't think that any studio is really good or bad news. I guess Paramount might be less risky than Netflix would be. Is there proof that Paramount Skydance will censor Warner Brothers? Well, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit with Colbert, and we'll talk about it again. There's no proof necessarily that they will, but I think what we have seen thus far is Paramount wanted to merge with Skydance, and the government was making some noise, and then CBS canceled Colbert, and all of a sudden the government wasn't making any noise anymore. There was a high-profile Democratic politician that was going to make an appearance on Stephen Colbert. The FCC had earlier said that, well, you know what, this exemption that late night shows have as far as being news programming for the equal time rule, actually that might not be the case. So a couple weeks after the FCC puts out this memorandum, all of a sudden now CBS's lawyers, and that's the other thing, like I said, we're going to get into it more either later today or tomorrow. The FCC didn't tell Stephen Colbert he couldn't have this Democratic politician on without triggering equal time. CBS's lawyers did, taking what the FCC said. So is there proof that they will censor Warner Brothers? No, there's not. And I think that it's more of a concern with CNN and the networks, maybe than the studio itself. But I would say that there is enough circumstantial evidence to say that they would not completely stay out of political matters as it applies to some of the properties that are owned by Warner Brothers. Nerdboy1871 says, favorite movie fight debate, top that I wish to redo. I mean, I think people often ask which one I would redo argument-wise, and I've said many times that it would be the Kevin Smith fight live at Comic-Con, where it was, what movie would you wipe out from existence? And he said Triumph of the Will, which was whatever. That's a ringer answer. He knew what he was doing there. I felt like after the fact, that there was an argument that I could have given that maybe could have stood up better to him saying Triumph of the Will. But at the time I couldn't think of it, and I gave a really bad argument and I lost the round. I wish I could redo that fight. Favorite one. I mean, it's hard for me to say it's not Sequest. My fight against Spencer for Sequest. And the reason it's my favorite is because I thought that if you watch that, in the moment, that passion is real because I want to win the argument. Do I really care about Sequest that much? No. Was I angry with Spencer about it? Absolutely not. We laughed about it after the show. But it's my favorite, not just because it was me yelling at Spencer about Sequest, but because I was absolutely backed into a corner there. He had me dead to rights on making a Sequest movie, and I'm proud of it because I was able to fight my way out of that corner and actually win the round, I believe. So I'd say that was my favorite, both as far as fan entertainment and as far as my own performance. Golden Eagle 92 says Scorsese is in Mandu and is in The Mandalorian and Grogu. Let that sink in. Yeah, I was watching it last night, or the trailer yesterday, and I heard Martin Scorsese voicing an alien So, but he's also he was in Shark Tale too. People forget. This is not Martin Scorsese's first foray into family entertainment. He was in Shark Tale as well, but it is pretty crazy. Mercurial Funk says the Mandalorian film looks like a 3-episode arc in the show. I'm sure it's fine, but it's hard to justify theater prices for a Hutt side quest, in my opinion. That's my concern with it. We've talked about the idea of Marvel even training people to watch their stuff at home, and so people don't go to see it in the theaters. This is literally something that you have trained people to watch at home from the very beginning. And to me, there is no differentiation between what people see on Disney Plus and what you're telling them or showing them that they're going to see in theaters. I think for a movie like this to work, you would have to, if you were Disney, show why they should wait or why they shouldn't wait to see it and why they should go see it on a movie screen. Any other TV show, for example, Star Trek The Next Generation. When Star Trek Generations came out, shortly after the TV show was over, when I saw the trailer for that and when I watched the movie, it was very obvious why I should go see it in a theater, because everything was upgraded. The visual effects were upgraded. The sets were upgraded. It was bigger in scale and scope. It was a movie version of the show that I watched. And I understand that Mandalorian is much more technologically advanced than Star Trek The Next Generation. But what they have not done with The Mandalorian and Grogu is to tell people or show them who are used to watching it at home what's different about that versus this. The movie just looks like the TV show in tone, in plot, the visuals, nothing looks upgraded. And so in addition to having trouble getting people to go see a Star Wars movie, which they have had somewhat in the last several years, they're also having to prove to people why they should go see it when it looks no different from what they've already seen. I think they've mishandled this whole thing from beginning to end. A Mandalorian movie would have been a no-brainer 5 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe after season 1 or season 2, but now I think they've mishandled the whole thing. Fluffy Pro says, who would you like to see in a Star Wars spinoff? I mean, honestly, I'm done with all of this spinning off of people. I mean, Andor worked because, yes, you had characters like Mon Mothma, who was an existing character, but you basically, in live action, you knew almost nothing of Mon Mothma. She was a glorified extra. I'm not diminishing her character. I know that she had a bigger part to play in the animated shows and in the extended universe and all that stuff. But I'm talking about live action wise. There was nothing there. And so they were able to flesh that character out a lot more. But the appeal of Andor was that it was an existing situation with almost completely new characters. Even Cassian Andor, again, he was part of the crew in Rogue One in one movie, but he was a supporting character, really. Maybe you want to say he was a co-lead, but it's a borderline case. So there was room to explore, and you had Stellan Skarsgård coming in. I mean, it was so good, and Mon Mothma, they turned into a really compelling character. I'm tired of seeing spinoffs of people we know. There's nobody that I'm like, ooh, I want to know more about them. No, show me somebody new. Give me new people, new characters. It works so well for Andor. Let's do that. Ben Zayton 933 says, for something lighthearted, please pitch a sequel to critically acclaimed art house movie Megalopolis. Will Adam Driver go back to the club? Again, movie pitches off the top of my head are not my forte. I mean, I think you have to make it a comedy at this point, really. You're not going to make your money back. So I would almost make it a meta. I mean, if you want to go experimental like Francis Ford Coppola did, then I would make Megalopolis a movie about somebody making the movie Megalopolis, but all of the characters in the movie about making Megalopolis are also like the characters in Megalopolis. So it's sort of a meta retelling of Megalopolis about the making of Megalopolis. That I think could work. That's not so bad. Jonathan in Movies, thank you so much, said, love the channel. Do you have a ranking for the original series movies? Would love to see more Star Trek content, especially TOS or TNG. Yeah, I mean, it's the only reason I don't do a whole lot of Star Trek stuff is because it's been very hit or miss whether or not people even care about it. Do I have a ranking for original series movies? I mean, 2, obviously, Wrath of Khan is the best. Then I mean, it's the cliche. It's 2, 4, 6. It's the it's the even numbered ones. And I think that 6 has really gained a lot in my estimation over the years. I'm not going to put it necessarily all the way up to the level of 4, but it's a lot closer than people would think. So 2, 4, 6, 3, Search for Spock, then a huge gulf, and then controversially, I would put Star Trek 5 next to last, and I'd put Star Trek the Motion Picture last. Is Star Trek the Motion Picture a better movie on a plot level? Yes. But if you were to put Star Trek 5 and Star Trek the Motion Picture in front of me and say, which one do you want to watch right now? I'd pick Star Trek 5 10 times out of 10 because it has really good character moments inside of the ridiculousness. And it's not a good movie, but it has good character moments. And Star Trek the Motion Picture, I'm sorry, it is a bore. It is so hard to get through that movie. And I 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not that I care about slow sci-fi, but it is an absolute chore to get through for me. So I'd put it at the bottom. I don't like that movie. I don't like it at all. Comtar says, motion picture is a very pretty music video, great score, great visuals, not much else there. I would agree. Trekker blasphemy, LOL. I don't know. I think there's some quiet people like me that like this. Let's see. Galaxy Quest would be third. Well, yeah, if you're including Galaxy Quest. I'm not one of those people that says Galaxy Quest is a Star Trek movie, by the way. I love Star Trek, but Dan is speaking truth. Thank you very much. The 4K remaster of the motion picture is amazing. I'm sure it looks amazing, but I can't with that movie. All right. Dylan Fitzsimmons says favorite standalone film set in space. Oh man, I feel so bad. And I don't want to, I want to deliver because I say that I'll answer anything and I do try, but these broad questions or ranking questions or recasts are very tough for me to think of on the fly. And I want to make the show interesting and not have it just be me trying to think of an answer. Favorite standalone film set in space. I guess 2001: A Space Odyssey, I guess no, because there's 2010. That's the thing. There's so many movies that have sequels now. It's like if a movie's good, it's almost bound to have a sequel. Moon. Yeah, there's no sequel to Moon. Let's go with Moon. Nerdboy1871 says top 3 movies you would recast with Kevin Hart and or Bill Hader. Top movie you wouldn't cast them in. I have the catalog of all movies ever made to access. It's very difficult for me to analyze both of them and analyze a bunch of movies and say, these are the 3 movies that I would cast them both in. Bill Hader is such a really good comedic talent. But again, if I'm putting him in a good movie, then doesn't that mean that the movie's already good? So then I have to think about bad movies that I would put Bill Hader in. Again, nothing really comes to mind. What is a movie that I wouldn't cast them in? I wouldn't cast them in like Airplane. I wouldn't cast them in any of the great comedies because they're great for a reason. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just, I do want to keep the show interesting as well. Plethora 1C says, do you think Warner Brothers Discovery allowing Paramount to make one final bid with Netflix's blessing is just them making sure they can't be sued when they merge with Netflix? That's kind of the implication. I think they're trying to play both sides of the coin here. Because they're saying, okay, that's kind of what Netflix is saying. Netflix is saying we gave them a week because we just want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted and there's no question so that Paramount can't come back and say the Netflix deal is invalid because they didn't give us a chance to do this, or we weren't allowed to do that, or you didn't tell the investors this. Netflix is kind of spinning it that way as saying, okay, we gave them a week because we want Paramount to get it all out of their system, put it all out there so that Warner Brothers can turn it down. And so that there's no question about what the best offer was. They had their chance and now it's out there and let's move on. That's the way that Netflix is selling it. And Warner Brothers is partially selling it that way, but they're also, in the statement that I read this morning, they're like, well, whoever came to us and said, if we re-engaged with you, they said that you would up your price to $31 a share. And that wasn't your best offer. So we're expecting you to increase it even more. I know David Zaslav. I've been following his run at Warner Brothers since before he was the head of Warner Brothers, through all of the merger and everything else. Do I think that Warner Brothers would take the deal with Paramount if it was determined that their stockholders would make $2 more than with the Netflix deal? Absolutely. I don't think that Warner Brothers has any loyalty to anybody in this situation except for who is going to make them the most money. They don't care about the theatrical market. They don't care about the implications with CNN. They don't care about that. We do, because these are things that affect us as movie fans and people that watch the news, etc. They don't. So I think Warner Brothers is kind of trying to play it both ways. I think that Netflix is regarding this as a chance to just make sure that there's no blowback for Paramount. I think that Warner Brothers would take a deal that they thought was better in a heartbeat, especially because now they don't have to pay the $2.8 billion they'd have to pay to Netflix. Now Paramount said that they'll take that up. I think they'll take it in a second. So I think that there's one side of this that thinks that it's just covering your butt. And I think that Warner Brothers would sell out in a minute. In a minute. Christopher Brickner says, which Star Wars film do you think will be better, Starfighter or Mandalorian? I think Mandalorian, because I think that Favreau is a better director than Levy. I mean, I haven't seen anything of Starfighter. So, I mean, I'm a little more excited because Starfighter is a new movie, but I just feel like I don't have enough evidence to make that kind of determination. And I think that Sean Levy, I mean, he's made good stuff and he's made bad stuff. I don't think he's a terrible director. I know a lot of people are really down on Sean Levy. I'm not as down on him. Reverse psychology. Don't watch Game of Thrones, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It totally sucks. I know. I've heard it's really good. There's a lot going on. Heroasaurus says implications of AI like sea dance on Hollywood, especially from countries that don't care much about U.S. copyright. Prediction: what will the next actor strike settle for? I mean, this whole AI thing is a whole other can of worms. Sea Dance is this new AI generator. If you've seen Tom Cruise fighting with Brad Pitt or any of the Superman Batman stuff, then you know that it can generate very realistic looking images using intellectual property. I mean, there have been cease and desist letters. I think that Disney, Paramount, and Netflix have now all sent cease and desist letters. And I think what you have to think when you say countries that don't care about U.S. copyright, Sea Dance and Bite Dance are businesses that are headquartered or based in China, in part or in whole. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have no business with the United States and that they can afford to alienate and open themselves up to lawsuits from major corporations like Disney, Warner Brothers, and Netflix. So you're not suing the country. There are many places that don't really care much about U.S. copyright law, but I do think this is still a business situation. And so I don't necessarily believe that it's going to be unfettered AI-generated content using copyrighted characters, because these companies are very good at what they do. If they need to sue somebody and get it to stop, eventually they will get it to stop. But this is what everybody said was coming as far as the capability of AI, and we're not even at the end game yet. This is just the next major step, and it's only going to get better from here. So anybody that wasn't taking this seriously needs to be taking this seriously, and I think it's one of the reasons why the actors and the writers tried to hold out for very strong AI protection. I don't think they got as much as they needed to in the last strike, but they got some. So I don't think the game is lost, but I think that everybody's got to get serious about this if they want to protect their intellectual property. You can't uninvent the technology. That's going away. The ability to create photoreal video, your own stories is here. And if somebody can do that and supplant Hollywood production, that's one thing. But the idea of using likenesses and copyrighted trademark stuff, that is now going to be a big legal thing. What do I think the next actor strike will settle for? Well, I mean, hopefully we don't have another actor strike for 10, 15, 20 years. There are negotiations this year on the contract, but it does not sound like they're heading toward a strike. It seems like there are going to be some healthcare things and stuff on the table. It really is kind of difficult to guess, because when it comes to the actor strikes, what they usually strike over are things that could not be foreseen at the time of the last strike, whether that is royalties from DVD sales or iTunes. At that time, individual episodes being sold on iTunes, digital revenue. That was what the actor strike, 20 years ago was all about. This one was all about the royalties from streaming services, which again could not be foreseen at the time. Those, so I think what the actors are going to strike over next is something that we don't necessarily know about right now, because it's always new things that the studios inevitably are able to make all the money on at first, and they then have to fight with the actors over how much they get, what's their piece of the pie. Inshear01 says, favorite performances by Raul Julia. I'm only familiar with Addams Family and Street Fighter. I need to see more. I need to see more Raul Julia films myself, like Kiss of the Spider Woman, movies like that. I grew up with him in the Addams Family, but I also need to kind of beef up on Raul Julia performances, because he's been great in some movies. I'm trying to think. He's in an action movie as the bad guy, and I remember I really liked him in it, not Street Fighter, and I'm blanking on it. I'm sure that somebody's going to be able to remind me on that. But I remember seeing that and being like, wow, Raul Julia is like a really good movie villain. Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the comments here. Daniel Thorne says, the Justice Department has summoned some of the largest movie theater chains in the U.S. for conversations about the impact of a Warner Brothers sale. I think that they need to do that. Absolutely. Let's see. Hi, Dan. Would you ever use AI to help you edit video or manage the channel or generate content? Would I ever use AI to help me edit a video? Maybe, in the sense of like using an AI generator for me to do Premiere has a text to edit feature that I actually was looking at when I was at Sundance. I went to the Adobe house and they were showing me this text to edit feature, which uses, I believe, AI to transcribe your video. And then you can edit a video using that transcription and basically set in and out points at the text instead of watching the video through and doing it, at the picture point. And that looked really cool. And that's an assistive technology to me. The AI is using me to generate that text, and that helps me do it. And that's where I think AI comes in. To manage the channel, I don't really know how AI could help me manage the channel. Would I use AI to help me generate content? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because then it's not my content. Then it is the AI's content. It's the AI's brain thinking up, and that's not what I'm thinking of. Let's see, The Rookie. Yes, The Rookie. That's exactly what it was. I watched The Rookie because I was doing Schmodown studying several years ago. Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen were both, I believe, wheel slices for the Schmodown. And so I was looking for movies that had multiple categories in them. And I watched The Rookie, and Raul Julia was the guy who was the bad guy in The Rookie. And he was very good in it. Thank you. I knew you guys would come through. You can always think of this stuff when I can't. You can probably answer all these questions, but I'm here to do that. So what do I think of the marketing for Avengers Doomsday? They're giving away all the people that are coming back. So it seems to be getting people excited. How many views did they get on a video of chairs with names on it? So I guess it seems to be working so far. Christopher Brickner says, why does Lucasfilm seem so determined to kill off the Skywalker bloodline and keep it dead? Fans generally hate killing off all the Skywalkers. I have the unpopular opinion of saying I don't need to see any more of the Skywalkers. I'm not saying wipe them all out, all of them. But I am saying I'm okay with not following Skywalkers around anymore. I think that when you are at the end of the road for what to do with a character, then killing them is the most dramatic option you can take. I think that is often a sign of desperation, or just not knowing what to do next. And so, yeah, I'm okay with not seeing any more Skywalker stuff. Mike Gibbons says, get Dan out of Sundance debt donation. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We're not quite at that point overall, although trust me, that will go towards it. But thank you. I appreciate it. Comtar says, considering a light kit for the Enterprise Lego, they really add a lot. Have them for my Tron and Nintendo Game Boy Lego builds. I haven't thought about that, but you know what? you're probably right. That'd be a good idea. I'll have to check into that. Thank you. Bailey Hartridge says, are there many good stoner movies? I'm trying to make a ranking. I mean, the Cheech and Chong movies are considered classics. I don't really know that much about them. Half Baked is certainly a stoner movie classic of my generation. Again, I haven't checked in on that in a long time. I think Dazed and Confused counts. It's at least partially a stoner movie. It's not a stoner comedy, but it's a stoner movie. Um, How High is another one of my generation that's very well regarded as a stoner comedy. I mean, any of the like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I think particularly would be considered a stoner comedy, and that to me would be one that qualifies because it's a silly, goofy movie, but I enjoy that movie quite a bit. I think Pineapple Express counts as a stoner comedy. So yeah, I'd say that there are some good stoner movies out there, but a lot of them are kind of hybrids. So there's a bit of subjectivity there. Carter Ross says, passive watcher here since Screen Junkies. YouTube is my main streaming. Taskmaster, Red Letter Media, Dropout, all good choices. And my wife just said while I was watching you, of everything you see, he's my favorite. That's it. Just sending some love from Brazil. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to your wife for saying that. I appreciate it. I'm glad that I am the least annoying option that you have on YouTube. It's always good. I would have said Taskmaster myself. Maybe even Mike and Jay over at Red Letter Media over me. I prefer watching both of those over myself. And much love to you back in Brazil. You guys are having a great run movie-wise. I think you might be looking at 2 international film Oscars in a row over there. So yeah, you're on a roll. Good stuff coming out of Brazil right now. Nerdboy 1871 says, should media or the media business be free from politics? If so, how would you do it? That's a tricky question. Media is never free of politics, meaning the media that are produced. News media, I think, should be apolitical. I don't think that we should have news that comes from a particular political point of view, because then you are going to skew the news that you're reporting to fit that point of view, and then it's not really news. So I don't think that media in the sense of news reporting should be political in that it comes from any particular point of view. Media, meaning TV shows, movies, etc., are made by artists. Artists have opinions. They express those opinions through various different forms, and the arts are one of them. And so I think that if you took politics out of movies in the sense of saying like they must be devoid of any political opinion, then you lose a lot of what art is all about. So I think that the companies themselves should not be driven by a political opinion one way or the other. News should be completely apolitical. The companies, private companies themselves, of course, are free to come at it from any approach that they want. But I think that you also have to look at, are you serving your audience, and what are you giving the spotlight to? What are you not? Those are personal decisions that every company has to make. But art will never be apolitical, or at least it shouldn't be. I think apolitical art is often dull, because what's your point of view? What are you trying to say? Andor is not an apolitical show. It's a very political show. It's just not necessarily an overtly political show, meaning it doesn't put a flashing red arrow on, this is what I'm really talking about, guys. And I think that's the best inclusion of politics in art. When an artist is able to craft something that's able to have a stance, have a point of view, make a comment on something that's going on in the world, but also have it function as its own story, so that when you read about, oh, well, this was meant as a metaphor for this or an allegory for that, you go, oh, yeah, I could totally see that. But also at the same time, it just worked in universe. Clunky stuff, and I'll include a lot of the Disney stuff where they do put stuff in the movies and you just see that, you hear the neon, like the me from the sign, the arrow pointing to, this is what we're trying to say. That annoys me. Even if I agree maybe with the message, even if I agree with where it's coming from, when you make it so obvious, that bothers me, because it's just lazy to me. It's like you're in it to get applause. You're in it for the praise. You're not in it to make something good. You're not in it to make an art that actually says something in a subtle way or in a meaningful way. But no, I don't think the media should be free from politics because I think that politics are intertwined with art and artists. But I think the business itself, meaning government regulation, anything involving news, anything involving sharing what should be unbiased information with people, should be free of politics. And how would I do that? I would foster an atmosphere for artists to feel as if they were free to say what they wanted to say and judge those projects based on their merits, not based on the political messages in those projects. And I would also set up strict regulations, again, if I was omnipotent, so that the government was not using political power as a tool, or was not using regulation, I should say, as a tool of political power, and also that anything that labels itself or presents itself as news is actually sharing factual, unbiased information from any side, by the way. Everyone always says, well, what about this? Any side. MMG3679 says, if you could write a movie, what genre would it be and who would you choose to direct it? I've always said I think it'd be fun to write a great comedy. I like the idea of writing something that makes people laugh. It's why I enjoyed writing Honest Trailers. So it'd probably be comedy. Sci-fi would be my second choice. And if it was comedy, I'd choose Edgar Wright. I'd love to write a movie that Edgar Wright directs. Golden Eagles 92 says, plans for a Trek film ranking. I know you're a huge Trekkie, and my wife is as well. We're almost through original series, so we'll get to the movie soon. Then TNG. Awesome. I love that you're going through the whole everything. I have thought about doing a Star Trek ranking. It's just that short of my video on Picard, which was about how much I didn't like that show, which generally tends to traffic in more attention, Star Trek content on the channel just doesn't really seem to be that appealing to many people. So I always have to make that measure of how much I'm spending doing something versus how much I think people will enjoy it. And it's a consideration, but not always the only consideration. What's the return going to be for if I do this thing? And Star Trek has not really proven to be, to me, anything that a lot of people are going to love. Man, we're going long today, but you guys have a lot of great questions. Zach Likes Movie says, original or double stuff Oreos? I'm going to be a little controversial here. I'm going to say original. I love the frosting. I love the frosting in a double stuff Oreo. I love the frosting in any Oreo, but I want the mix too. I don't just want only sweet frosting with a hint of chocolate. I want a good mix of the chocolate and the frosting. And I have always found that the frosting in a regular Oreo, unless shrinkflation has hit Oreos too, is more than sufficient. So I'm going to say single. Plus, I could eat more regular Oreos without feeling guilty or like I'm going to go into a sugar coma. Cartoon 49 says, what would be a classic 80s or 90s movie worth remaking? I mean, I think that movies that are remade, the ones that are worth remaking are movies that maybe had an interesting idea, but didn't quite work for one reason or another. So, I'm not one of those people that's like Back to the Future or any great movie from the 90s, because it's like, well, no, we already have Back to the Future and it's great. Why would we want to remake that? So I'm trying to think of something that was like, had promise, didn't quite deliver on that promise, but at its core, has an idea that might be worth seeing. Man, the catalog. It's always tough to do the catalog. I mean, I would maybe say Dune, but we did Dune, and we did Dune very successfully. I actually thought The Running Man was one that I thought was, oh, why are you redoing that? And then when I saw it, I'm like, actually, no, I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea. You have the Running Man of the 80s, and now you have our current Running Man. And I think that both can exist. So that's another example of a time where, you can remake something and it's not necessarily an insult to the original. I don't know. I guess I'll have to go back to again, this is also a classic movie from the 80s or 90s. They're a classic for a reason. But I'll go back to my fallback, and I'm sorry because everybody's heard me say this a million times before, but I still think you could do a better version of The Shining. Not that Kubrick's film isn't great, but I think you can do a great version of the story in the book, and we didn't get that. And so I'm going to go back to my fallback. I apologize. It's one that everybody's heard before. But again, this idea of remaking a classic movie or recasting people in a classic movie, the classics are classics for a reason. So I'm not really going to want to change anything. Whoa, Kristen Says, enjoyed Fantastic Fest last year. Any suggestions for other small festivals for average film fans? I've heard, I don't know how small it is. I've heard that Telluride is kind of on the rise. It's kind of becoming the new Sundance, if you will. Although I love Sundance, so maybe Telluride. Tribeca has always got some good solid. If you want to go super indie, Tribeca is always a good one. Christopher Brickner 5181 says Star Wars has been bad at balancing new and legacy characters. You need new stories with new characters, but you also need to still use legacy characters. Yeah, I mean, I guess. Or I think you could also, if you make good new characters, they become your legacy characters. Alexander Wilson 3724 says Ben Solo was and is a lame character who was a whiny emo brat that was played by a 30-year-old. Disney was right to move on from that. See, I disagree with you there. Coming out of the Force Awakens, Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, was my favorite character. He was the character that, to me, was the most interesting out of Rey, out of Finn, out of Poe. To me, I thought that Kylo Ren had the most going on. I loved what Adam Driver was doing with that character, and I'm like, I want to see more of him. I want to see what his arc is like. He was failed, I think, by the combination of the next two movies. Rian Johnson took him in an interesting way, many ways that I disagreed with, and some ways that I did agree with. And then Rise of Skywalker just said, let's do the fan service version of it, which to me was not interesting at all. But I would disagree. I actually think that Ben Solo / Kylo Ren had the potential to have the most interesting storyline of any of the new sequel characters, but they never paid off on that potential. And it seemed like maybe that might be what they were trying to do with this one, but just didn't get a chance to. Clay7729 says, hey, Dan, you said before walking out of the theater isn't your thing, no matter how bad the movie is, but have you ever shut off a movie at home and said, absolutely not, thanks? I try not to, but I do remember many years ago, I started watching Expendables 4. And I got about halfway through and I was like, it wasn't even that I hated it. I was just like, I think I got busy or had to go do something or whatever. And I just never turned it back on. I think I have since seen the rest of it, but it was many years later. So it's not necessarily where I'm like, nope, I'm not watching this. For one reason or the other. Generally, if I make a commitment to watch a movie, I'm going to watch that movie all the way through in theaters or at home. But I do remember starting Expendables 4 and being so disinterested that I never returned to it, or at least not for several years. Kay Stepko says, have you been watching the Winter Olympics? Do you have a favorite event? Do you have any bloopers or controversies that have been grabbing your attention? I have been watching the Winter Olympics a little bit. It's tough to devote that much time to it because it's hours and hours per day or per night. And it's also tough the years that it's in a country that's ahead of us, because unless I avoid reading any kind of news site, any kind of sports site, a lot of notifications on my phone throughout the day, then I'm going to see what happened. And for me, so much of the fun of the Olympics is seeing what's happening, what's not knowing who's going to win. And it used to be that they would they would say, if you want Olympic results, click here. But now they're so desperate for clicks that the second something happens, they immediately put it as the top headline on every site. And so I know what's happened. So I probably watched the least out of any recent Olympics this year, but I have watched it a little bit. I'm a fan of just the athleticism and also the suspense of figure skating. Especially, solo figure skating. I did watch the whole thing with, I didn't know what happened with Ilya Malinin. So I watched that not in real time, but I watched it not knowing what was going to happen. And there's just so much pressure involved with that. And you feel so good for some people and so bad for other people. But I also watched that kid from Kazakhstan who won the gold medal. Spectacular. I mean, that was an incredible Olympic moment, even though the United States was on the losing end of it, along with Japan. That was a spectacular Olympic moment because his routine was phenomenal. So to see some people that you didn't expect rise up and perform in a way that nobody thought that they could, and then also people who everybody thinks are the best in the world, and they just have a moment of the pressure and the spotlight. And I think the United States and the U.S. media particularly puts way too much pressure on these athletes, and they hype them up for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they produce these packages about how they're the best in the world and they're the favorite and they're going to win in the hopes of the country, and they build it up before the event even happens. It's no wonder they have a trouble dealing with that pressure. And I generally hate the coverage that we have here in the United States of the Olympics because there's so many commercials and it's all of this so I'm not this thing. Oh, they're a choke artist. They choked. Nobody can deal with that kind of pressure. It takes a special kind of person to be able to, and I think we're going to see more from Malin in the future. The controversy is the one that everyone's been talking about that I think is hilarious. That of all the sports in the Winter Olympics, the biggest controversy has been men's curling and whether or not Canada has been touching the granite with their finger or not. If you haven't seen the controversy about men's curling, it is absolutely hilarious because on its surface, it's a very silly thing, but actually it's also a very real thing that should be addressed. But I love that the big controversy at the Winter Olympics this year has been about curling. That's hilarious. Let's see. Alexander Wilson, 3724 says, did you see today's Deadline article about Predator Badlands having high streaming viewership and it only came online on the 12th? Is this the future? I did see that Predator Badlands had very good viewership. I think it was the best debut on Hulu since Prey, which was the last Predator film, but that was an online exclusive. I mean, I think it's been the future for a while. And, Predator Badlands did well at the box office. It did all right, but it didn't, it wasn't a blockbuster. And I think it's the future in the sense that you could see movies that do acceptable box office business, but then become much, much bigger hits on streaming. And the economics of that is what everybody's trying to figure out. So yes, I think it's an indication of the future. Film Chart 42 says top 3 choices to voice Bucky in a film. Let's see. Have you guys help me with this? If you don't know who Bucky is, this is Bucky. He's the mascot of Buc-ee's. He's a beaver. His name is on, and his face are on everything at Buc-ee's. I don't know. When I look at Bucky, who do I see as Bucky? Let's see. I can see Michael Cera, maybe. If you're going for a young Bucky. Oh, God, I can't do that. The camera's going to try to focus on Bucky the whole time. I could see Michael Cera, maybe, as a voice of Bucky. That could work. But I also want to see what your suggestions are. I'll jump back over to the regular comments in the section in a minute and see what you suggest. Why are there concerns about Warner Brothers being bought now when these concerns weren't pushed more when Disney bought Fox? I would say that they were pushed very, very much when Disney bought Fox. Having covered it at the time, we very much were concerned about Disney buying Fox and the anti-competitive nature of it and the job loss, et cetera. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about that. I think why you might be hearing more about the Warner Brothers deal is specifically because Netflix is involved. So you have the streaming element, which was not a factor last time, and whether HBO Max and Netflix together are anti-competitive. And you also have the theatrical model element of, is Warner Brothers going to take their movies, or is Netflix going to take Warner Brothers movies out of theaters? Again, when Disney bought Fox, there really even was not a streaming element anywhere close to what we see now. So I think you're hearing about it now because it's different, but there were absolutely those concerns about Disney buying Fox, and they were valid then. They were absolutely valid then. And that's just not how it goes. All right, let's see. Pedro Bucky Pascal. That's a good one. Shia LaBeouf. I'm going to have to bail him out, I guess. Seth Rogen. Pedro is Bucky. Pedro Pascal. Chris Pratt as corporate approved Bucky. Let's see. Oh, wow. Yep. So then we have Chris Pratt, and so long as it's not Chris Pratt. Instant choice is John Mulaney. Funny choice is Werner Herzog. Both amazing choices, just as long as it's not Chris Pratt. Steve Buscemi. All right. Emmy stealer Steve Buscemi. He's not actually. Only James Corden is a true Emmy stealer. Jack McBrayer. Let's see. I got overlighted and missed a few. I don't think I did. I'll double check though. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull that one up. Yeah, Jack McBrayer's a good one. I could see Jack McBrayer doing it. Yeah, that's good. Finn Wolfhard. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I could see it. Dominique, I see you asking about your super chat. I'm sorry. I'm getting through them as fast as I can. I don't think I've skipped any. Maybe I did that I'm not seeing, but I think I may just not have gotten to yours yet. Sorry. It's I've gotten a lot of super chats today, and everyone's been amazing with their super chats, but I am backlogged a little bit. So it's possible that you just haven't seen yours come up yet. If there was a problem on YouTube's end, then I apologize. But I'm looking through here. I don't see yours that I haven't answered yet. Let's see. I'm just making sure I haven't skipped any because I want to make sure if you're leaving a super chat, you're getting your answer here on the show. I know this is fascinating television because this is what we're going with. But yeah, no, I'm about literally 45 minutes behind on super chats, by the way. I will say, actually, thank you to everyone who sent a super chat, but I'm way behind and I don't want the show to run too terribly long. I never know how many questions you guys are going to have, but you have a lot. So if you haven't sent them in, or if you haven't sent your question in, maybe start thinking about it now and send those in, because we are at an hour and a half and I actually have kind of a sore throat today. So, let's send those in now. Let's at least put an end to the super chats because I'm so behind, which is a good, by the way, problem to have. Fladmus says, want to show appreciation to movie lover that tries to be as unbiased as possible and obviously loves the art industry. Not required. Top 3 Michael J. Fox movies, excluding Back to the Future. Thank you, by the way. Those are very kind words. I do try to be as unbiased as I can, but I do love the art in the industry. Top 3 Michael J. Fox movies, excluding Back to the Future. Mars Attacks would be up there, I think. There's a lot I haven't seen, too. Homeward Bound, does that count? He's voice only, but I think that counts as a Michael J. Fox movie. I saw The Frighteners. I didn't love the movie, but I think he's good in it, and I think that the effects are good. American President. I'm going to say American President. He's great in American President. Ferris EB says, if Parent Skydance did successfully buy Warner Brothers Discovery, what's the craziest thing you hope John Oliver would do to give them the finger? I mean, I think that John Oliver is not, he's not, and I watched Last Week Tonight every single week and have since it came out. He's not somebody who just gives his corporate bosses the finger for no reason. So I don't think he's going to give them the finger immediately for no reason. I just love his Britishness and the dryness of his Britishness. And I love when he makes a grand gesture to give somebody the finger if they truly deserve it. So I would love to see him do one of his very elaborate schemes where, it's he went and found a artist to make a sculpture that's the size of the Paramount Mountain, but it's made of, I mean, who knows what. It's the more elaborate and the more obscenely out of scale with the problem, the more I like it. So I'm sure he could come up with something much more creative than I could, but I don't think he's a guy that's just going to do it for no reason. Film Chart 42 says live action actors or choices for a Bucky film. I think all the people that we talked about, just put them in the suit. Top genre choice for a Bucky film. I think you have to go animated first, animated comedy, followed by animated, middle ground for adults. And then I'd say followed by parody, Naked Gun style comedy that acknowledges that it's a brand movie. Christopher Brickner says, I think it was great that David Lynch's final directorial project was season 3 of Twin Peaks, wrapping up the cliffhanger in Lynch's biggest project. I agree. My only regret with Twin Peaks being David Lynch's final project is that it was his final project, because I'd love to see more from David Lynch, even though, and I say this all the time, even if his stuff doesn't necessarily resonate with me, I loved watching it because he had a vision unlike anybody else, maybe in the history of Hollywood. Nerdboy1871 says, choose live action Minions or fully AI movie. Fully AI, 100%. Make them the monstrosities that they are. Use this monstrous thing, potentially monstrous thing, to make the Minions as monstrous as they are. Maybe then everybody will get it. Live action, everyone's going to be like, it's Minions, but they're new. No, make them monstrous. Make them evil. Make everybody see them the way that I see them through my eyes. This is the only time I will ever endorse the use of artificial intelligence in the making of a motion picture. But this is very serious stakes here, because I feel like I'm the only one that sees what's really going on. The Minions must be stopped. And the surefire way to stop something right now is to involve AI in the production of it. So I'd say fully AI, and that's the only time I will take that stance. Alexander Wilson says Andor works so well because instead of basing his Star Wars on Star Wars, Tony Gilroy based his Star Wars on what Star Wars was originally based on. I would agree with that. George Lucas, yes, was making a big space movie with, Chewbacca and everything, but it was based on the real world in many ways. And I agree. Tony Gilroy didn't base it on what other people had come up with. He used the world to talk about things that were happening in the real world, like art does. Crimson Double O Phoenix says, did you try fry sauce on your trip to Sundance? Fry sauce? No, unless you mean ketchup. Is there a whole thing that I should have known about Sundance with fry? I never went anywhere that I saw offering fry sauce. Now I feel like I missed something. No, I didn't. Tell me what fry sauce is. Dwayne Fernandez 2644 says, do you think if Netflix gets Warner Brothers, then they will keep Warner Brothers independent and won't cause all the layoffs that happens with most mergers? Is there any upside? Here's what I think. I think that if Netflix buys Warner Brothers, there will be fewer layoffs than there will be with Paramount because Netflix does not have a traditional movie studio right now. They have their streaming, and they do have obviously executives, and they have streaming personnel, but they don't necessarily have the infrastructure for a traditional studio. If Paramount gets Warner Brothers, it's going to be an absolute two reasons. Number one, Paramount already has a traditional studio. So you basically have duplicate infrastructures, which means that there are going to be a lot of layoffs. And Paramount has bragged about the billions of dollars that they're going to be able to save in, what do they call them? The word's escaping me right now. Not redundancies, but I'll think it's synergies, I think. Basically, they're going to lay off a whole lot of people, and they're going to have to, because if Paramount gets Warner Brothers, they're going to be in tens of billions of dollars of debt. I know that Larry Ellison has guaranteed some of the financing. They're still going to be in tens of billions of dollars of debt, and they don't have the revenue stream to pay that back quickly. So what they're going to need to do, first of all, is to drastically cut spending. And what does that mean? Synergies, layoffs, firing people, getting rid of people. So I think that Warner Brothers will be more independent with Netflix owning them. Not that there won't be layoffs, but Paramount will absolutely cut the staff drastically if they get Warner Brothers. That's what I mean, it's not even what I think. That's what they've said. Dylan Ward, 5680, just $1. Thank you, Dylan. Not just $1, meaning you only sent $1. I mean, there's no message. There's only a $1 super chat, and thank you for that. Clay 7729 says, when you meet new people and tell them what you do, what is the one thing they assume that you always have to correct? I would say there is often an assumption. A lot of people have said, and I've said this before, but it's something people say, I wish I could get paid to watch movies, which is part of what I do. And I'm very happy to do that, but it is not all that I do. I think that a lot of people assume that I just watch movies and then it takes me 5 minutes to do a review. No, there's a lot more to it than that. So yeah, I would say that there's often an assumption that I just watch movies all day, every day, and then I get paid for it. I do watch movies a lot. I'm probably going to watch 1 or 2 movies tonight, but there's so much work that follows that. Whereas most people watch movies and then they go do something else. I watch a movie, that's the beginning of my process. Then there's all the work happens after that. People just think about the fun part, and they don't think about all the work that follows that. Dominique Odom, 3099 says, why should I care about anything Stephen has to say? Remember him speaking out against Chadwick winning the Best Actor award the year he died after inviting his widow to the ceremony? I don't actually remember. I assume you mean Stephen Colbert. Why I don't remember him speaking out against Chadwick Boseman winning Best Actor. Let me hang on. I don't usually look up stuff during the show, but this is an interesting thing that I've never heard of. So it feels like I would have heard about that. Let's see. I don't see any. I don't see any. I mean, I just searched Chadwick Boseman, Stephen Colbert. And I don't see, am I thinking of a different person? Because we were talking about Colbert. Is there somebody else? Let me look in the live comments here. That's a fact. Look it up. I mean, I'm trying to look it up right now. You don't have to leave another super chat, but if you're talking about Stephen Colbert, I don't see any reference to that anywhere. And I would think that if he'd said that, then that would be kind of a big deal that I could find a reference to somewhere, but I'm literally not seeing it here anywhere in the search. So yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's just, I can't, it's Steven Soderbergh. Okay. I'm sorry. We were talking about two people named Steven on the show, and Stephen Colbert and Steven Soderbergh. So, okay. I got you now. You're in all caps. Let me see what I look up when I see Steven Soderbergh and Stephen Colbert. I don't mean to be aggressive, but I think you're coming at me a little aggressive here. Let me reference, because I want to see what he said before I give a response to what you said. So Steven Soderbergh, Chadwick Boseman. Steven Soderbergh defends awkward Oscars ending. If Boseman were to win and his widow were to speak on his behalf, there would be nowhere to go after that. Let's see. We thought it would be okay. So this is referring to when Steven Soderbergh was the producer of the Academy Awards, which was the year that Chadwick Boseman was favored to win Best Actor. They put Best Actor as the last category of the night. And so he said the actor's speeches tend to be more dramatic than producer's speeches. They thought it would be fun to mix it up, especially if people didn't know what was coming. So that was part of the plan, because a lot of people said, why would you put Best Actor last? Because it ended on Anthony Hopkins not being there. Soderbergh and his team doubled down on ending the Oscars with Chadwick Boseman. When the nominations came out and there was even the possibility that Chadwick would win posthumously, our feeling was if he were to win and his widow were to speak on his behalf, there would be nowhere to go after that. So we stuck with it. Okay. So I said that it was even a sliver of a chance that he would win and that his widow would speak. Then we were operating under the fact that was the end of the show. It wasn't like we assumed it would, but if there's even a possibility it would happen, then you have to account for that. There would have been such a shattering moment that to come back after that would have been impossible. So again, from what I'm reading, it sounds like, okay, so you're saying they invited Chadwick Boseman's family and then screwed him. I don't mean to be pedantic here, but I want to explain something about the situation. Steven Soderbergh produced the Academy Awards that year. The last award of the night was Best Actor. The front runner to win Best Actor was Chadwick Boseman, who tragically had passed away the year before. And so, again, going by this interview that I just read here, Steven Soderbergh, who was the producer of the show, said they looked at the nominees and they said, if Chadwick Boseman were to win the Academy Award, which the odds were favorable that he would, then we feel as if we were to give Best Actor and have his widow, who's in attendance, give the speech, then the Best Picture award would be not even really, that moment would be so emotional that you couldn't make that transition to then do Best Picture. So they wanted to end the night potentially on that moment because they felt that it would be an emotional climax of the show, and they wanted to end on that. They didn't screw anybody because Steven Soderbergh didn't choose who wins the Oscar. So they thought that I mean, Anthony Hopkins was considered to be a possibility, but there was no inviting his widow and then saying, you don't get it. That the Academy makes that decision. Steven Soderbergh made a decision as a producer of the show. And I would say I understand his logic. I always think that Best Picture should be last anyway. I understand his logic. That doesn't mean I agree with it. But I don't think that he did anything conscious there. And I don't think that he did anything aggressive or intentionally a slight to his family. I think that he was, as a producer, making a judgment call saying that if he won the Academy Award, that it would be a very highly emotional moment.
and that it would probably potentially even take focus from the Best Picture winner. So they wanted to end the ceremony on what could be the emotional high point of the night. So I understand. I just don't see a willful action on Steven Soderbergh's part saying we are going to intentionally screw over Chadwick Boseman's family by bringing them in and then not giving them the Oscar. That's not up to him as a producer. I do think that it was a possibility that he should have considered, but that doesn't seem willful to me. It's not. I don't think people want to say, why are you spending so much time on this? That's kind of what I want to do here on the channel, because a lot of times I think that people think things and then that may not even be what was meant by that, or it may not reflect exactly the system. So, if I just don't see how that was an intentional thing from Steven Soderbergh to screw over Chadwick Boseman or his family. I think it was perhaps a questionable decision from a producing standpoint, but I also understand his logic of, if he wins, we want to end on this emotional high point. So respectfully, I disagree with your assessment of the situation, because I just don't think that was in any way, shape, or form what the intention was. And again, your question says he spoke out about Chadwick winning the Best Actor award. He didn't speak out. He didn't say that he shouldn't win. He at all. So I just think that you're kind of coming from a sense of maybe misunderstanding the situation. Respectfully. Christopher Brickner says, it's been over 10 years since The Force Awakens came out. Does the movie feel different rewatching all these years later now the trilogy is done? Absolutely it does for me, because I thought it ended on such a great moment and endless possibilities and what's going to happen next. And that was so much of my feeling of the movie was tied into that final moment. And that, I think, was deflated by the two movies that came afterwards. So I still enjoy the film, and the things I liked about it, a lot of them, the character moments and a lot of the humor and stuff like that, I still like, but I do think that it was diminished by what came after. Johnny Stacy 786 says, are there any movies you can think of in the last 10 years that weren't well received critically, but will be looked at as a classic in the future? Again, I'm so sorry. These are tough questions, because I got to go back through 10 years of movies, or see if there's anything that kind of springs to mind. There's certainly a lot of cases of that in history. Anything in the last 10 years, though, that I feel like critics are like, it depends on what you call a classic. Like, for example, I think The Greatest Showman is a movie that I don't think will ever be hailed as like a movie classic for the ages, but I think that there are a lot of people who that's one of their favorite movies, and critics, including myself, were definitely way down on The Greatest Showman. And so in that sense, I think that there's going to be movies like that, but like an all-time classic, again, I think you even have to get maybe 10 years, more than 10 years away from it. But there have certainly been cases where a movie was not appreciated properly when it came out. And then that has grown over time. Nothing springs immediately to mind, but I think as far as fan reaction, I think The Greatest Showman is one that a lot of people still love and still talk about, that the critics really were very mixed on at the time at best. Nerdboy 1871 says, streaming sustainable? What's next after streaming? That's the thing. There is no next after streaming. Streaming was the end game. And that could have played out two ways. There was one way with streaming where you had a smaller number of streamers who made money by being streaming providers. And you had the studios who were then farming out their stuff to these different streamers, licensing their materials. So they were basically feeding the streaming economy. They were feeding the material. The streamers would then feed that to the audience. That's sort of the way it was going with Netflix, but then everybody decided they wanted to be Netflix. And instead of there being a few streamers, now there are a whole bunch of streamers that are all trying to compete to be the content funnel for everybody. And I think that has been disastrous, honestly, for a large chunk of the entertainment industry. And so now I think what that has led to is that there will still at the end of this be a few streamers left, except that now there will also be fewer studios left and fewer companies left, because they compromised themselves so heavily to make their own streaming services that they put themselves in a vulnerable position to be acquired. And you end up with the same result anyway. So Is streaming sustainable? Not for everybody. It will still only be sustainable for a few players. There is no next after streaming. That's it. We're unless the holodeck is invented, or people just go completely off of any sort of visual entertainment. That's it. Misfit Stein said, "Have you watched The Orville yet? It's a great show." I haven't, and people keep telling me to, but I just never did. I should. That's one of those things that's always on my list to go back and watch. I think I tried to watch it when it first came on, and I made that mistake of giving up on it too early because I heard it developed into a really good show. And I think this is our last question. Clay 7729, collaboration with a Minions movie or a Movie Pass revival. Which are you choosing? I mean, Movie Pass revival all day, every day. Because if Movie Pass came back, it'd be one of two things. They would either have figured out a way to do it sustainably, or somebody else was just going to spend their money to give me free movies for a while and then go to jail. But I'd still get free movies out of it. So yeah. Movie Pass revival all day, every day. At a minimum, it would give me a lot more to talk about than a new Minions movie. All right, let's do a quick scan here. Scott Pilgrim is more popular now than when it came out, and critics didn't always get it. Was that in the last 10 years? I think that was like 2010-ish. Almost, though. Listen, the whole thing is the time gets condensed. But Scott Pilgrim is one that I think is much more critically well regarded now. Next after streaming is beaming movies directly into your brain, where if you've seen Batman Forever, is a bad idea. I would agree. We don't need Enigma Tech and the box on top of everyone's brain, because then they're just going to steal your credit cards and try to blow up Gotham City. We all know that. Who will win the streaming wars? Maybe Sony, because they didn't fight. I mean, I think that Netflix is the winner of the streaming wars, and Sony is a winner because, yeah, they didn't play the game, and they're just sitting back collecting millions of dollars without the billions of dollars on their books from trying to build out a big streaming service. Dungeons and Dragons, I think for a movie that was underappreciated, it's still shockingly good. I would agree, but I think critics, as I recall, I think critics got that one. Spaceballs, earlier than 10 years. Spaceballs, I think, is a good example of a movie that maybe got a bad rap critically, but it's now a classic. Eddington, time will tell. It certainly was not too popular with critics when it came out. I think that's a good one. We'll see. Let's see. Is VR movies ever going to take off? I don't know. We'll see. I think the hardware costs are the ones. Who does know who will win the Academy Awards, and could any of them have stepped in and stopped that weird Oscars ending? As we learned with La La Land, there are, I believe, two people who know the winners of the Academy Awards, and those are the people that have the results, who did not stop the La La Land Moonlight fiasco from happening because they handed over the wrong envelope. They did step in afterwards because they knew that the wrong winner had been announced. I think there might be one or two other people, but they're very close on it. Could they have stepped in and stopped that weird Oscars ending? Well, I guess they could have, but only if you were then going to clue in the producers to it and say, hey, don't do that because we know who won. And you're compromising the chain of information at that point. And I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that. One last question, and then we'll end it. Stuckmanized Fatty says, hey, Dan, those CBS lawyers are paranoid cowards to Colbert. I noticed you blink for long periods. Do you find it annoying? And what is your condition? I assume either you were the person that commented this or somebody else, or you noticed my response to this, or I've had two comments. People say I blink for a long time, and it's not something that I am conscious of doing. I think sometimes when I think, I'll close my eyes to try to get my train of thought, or sometimes I'll kind of close my eyes to rest them if I'm like changing them to go to the monitor, especially if I've been looking down the barrel for a while. But I don't really think that I blink that long. I've never noticed. Let me tell you, if you're on YouTube, you have to understand why you are going to get literally. But I think I just did it now. Like, I will sometimes close my eyes to get my train of thought, but it's not a long blink. It's not a medical condition, I promise you. You will get questions, and like literally, there's a digit wrong anywhere on charts, on any chart, one digit This week it was, I put 13 instead of 23 on a release year. I got 3 or 4 comments about that. Heaven forbid I say something wrong, because then it's going to be about that. And literally every micro thing, what I wear, what I choose to wear, if I'm wearing Arkansas gear or Florida State gear, or if I close my eyes and it's a long blink, nothing is good. I have maybe a dozen times on this channel, I have said something, or something's gone through, or I said something on charts, or maybe there's something that wasn't as clear as I thought it should be. And I'll say, well, but they'll know what I mean. Or, well, nobody will notice that. Wrong. People always notice that, and it will be commented on. And that's something that I think that I've certainly had to get used to. And I think that I'm a lot better about it now, but it was kind of shocking, especially when I first started to do stuff on YouTube, is every word, comma, period, digit, everything gets microanalyzed, and it is going to be pointed out and asked about. So if that was a legitimate question, then I don't, again, I think I have a tendency sometimes to, when I'm thinking, to close my eyes, because it's just something that helps me to focus my brain a little bit. If I do that, I can sort of visualize it a little bit more, but I certainly don't have like a medical condition or anything like that. So yeah. Okay. Interesting question to end the show on. We've had a few interesting questions today, but thank you. We went almost 2 hours today. I never know how long we're going to go. I mean, sometimes you all just want to know a whole bunch of stuff. Thank you to everybody who sent in a question. Like I said, I am going to work on a video, I think, about Stephen Colbert and the FCC and everything going on with that. You may see that tomorrow or Friday. And who knows what else is going on. There's so much news happening right now, as far as CBS and Paramount and Warner Brothers and Netflix. Like, I'm just kind of on standby at this point, as well as preparing for the Oscars and some other stuff that I've got ready. So thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you to everybody who sent in a question. I hope that my answers were sufficient. Be sure to stay tuned. I don't know if there's going to be a live show next week. So there may be, or there may not be. That was an intentional wink too. That was not a medical condition. I don't know if there might be something that gets in the way of a live show next week, but I will update you here on the channel, either on a video or through a community post. And, but regardless of whether the live show is next week or 2 weeks from now, thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for more. Thanks to everybody for staying engaged and asking such interesting questions. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.